the phrase from that summit, which made headlines everywhere, was the New World Order that Mr. Carney said during his conversation. What is this New World Order? Is it a China-led New World Order?
A world order dominated by rogues and autocrats who do what they want, or try to do what they want, for example, in the case of Mr. Trump, as they do in the case of Mr. Xi.
Mark Carney has shown a very pragmatic foreign policy where he would like to engage with countries like India and China that Canada has had problems with in the past.
I think the real answer is that he doesn't have an alternative. Canada's been impacted, perhaps more than any other country in this sense, by the arrival of Donald Trump on the scene. What they're all doing, not just Carney, using your words carefully and using them ambiguously to suggest I'm not really being a whore.
India is the next logical partner, and there has been warming of ties. How do you see it moving forward?
They have not decided to settle the dispute, which began the precipitous decline in relations, which happened when Trudeau accused the Modi government of murder. It's much more important to the voting public in both India and Canada to have a healthy economy. Let's build on trade. Let's worry about that. We didn't know this guy Nijjar. The hell with it.
Can these two events coincide simultaneously? The trial of Hardeep Singh Nijjar and India-Canada trade pacts?
If anyone can do it, probably Narendra Modi is the man. I mean, he's an enormously clever man. And he's also quite ruthless.
The assassination of Mr. Nijjar, but failed to provide evidence. They talk about information. They said they've received credible information. But have you seen any evidence?
I have seen evidence in the form of the commissioner, the deputy commissioner, and their senior officials of the RCMP swear on a stack of Bibles that the Lawrence Bishnoi gang is working for the Indian government.
Why is it that these Khalistanis in Canada plot insurrection in India and want a breakaway state in India, but they never talk about the Punjab part of Pakistan?
Without Pakistani support, their movement dies. They have depended on Pakistani support from the very beginning.
Is Khalistan that big of a stumbling block now for Indo-Canadian relations?
Most people in Canada have no idea who Hardeep Singh Nijjar was. Most Sikhs don't care about it either. Whoever murdered Hardeep Singh Nijjar did a great favor for the Khalistanis because it gave them a propaganda victory.
Terry Milewski, thank you for joining the broadcast. You worked in 50 countries during your tenure with the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, almost a 4-decade-long career. You were the first Middle East bureau chief for the CBC, and you've also spent many years in Washington, D.C., covering the Reagan, Bush, and Clinton administrations. Now you call Ottawa home, and you've been kind enough to talk to us to explain what's Canadian foreign policy. So thank you for coming on the broadcast.
Thanks for the invitation.
So, sir, let's begin with the latest comments and the latest visit that your Prime Minister had with China. From a serious security threat, the greatest security threat, to now a strategic partner. How do you see the arc?
Well, it makes your neck hurt, doesn't it? I mean, you could get whiplash watching the twists and turns of Canadian foreign policies that tries to navigate, I guess, these very choppy seas right now. But you're quite correct. I mean, as little as 10 years ago, Canada, under Justin Trudeau at the time, was contemplating severing relations completely with China. And there was the Two Michaels affair, which was basically hostage-taking by the Chinese government. You could not have imagined at that time this. What did he say? He said a strategic partnership. I'm quoting the new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, talking about a strategic partnership with the same China that we just discussed. Well, so it is a bit of a head snapper, but he answered that question in a way with the phrase I think is perhaps maybe the most memorable, may turn out to be the best remembered from the summit, that we have to take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. In other words, we're just going to have to be flexible. We're going to have to get along with governments of which we do not approve.
My takeaway, the phrase from that summit, which made headlines everywhere, was the New World Order that Mr. Carney said during his conversation. What is this New World Order? And this pivot, is it a China-led New World Order?
Well, I think it's the same as the old world order, isn't it? The New World Order originally became a sort of catchphrase, I think, with the fall of communism and everything was going to be sunshine and roses. And that would be the New World Order. But now, what they really mean by that is a world order dominated by rogues and autocrats who do what they want or try to do what they want, as, for example, in the case of Mr. Trump, and make life relatively grim for the rest of us, as they do in the case of Mr. Xi. We'll have to see, but it's ironic, I think, that the same phrase has popped up again, but it doesn't mean the same thing at all.
Right. Mr. Milewski, it's been a year now since Mr. Carney's prime ministership, and we, at least here in New Delhi, we've noticed a very pragmatic approach towards foreign policy than what his predecessor had, which was probably a more principled stand. I'm using single quotation marks when I say principled stand with Trudeau's foreign policy. Mark Carney has shown a very pragmatic foreign policy where he would like to engage with countries like India and China that Canada has had problems with in the past. How do you see this change between Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Carney, and do you think Canadians are better off with this new approach?
Well, I mean, you used the word pragmatic, and that is a polite word for these circumstances, because I think the real answer is that he doesn't have an alternative. So he's making it look as good as he can. Let's face it, the whole Canada's been impacted, perhaps more than any other country in this sense, by the arrival of Donald Trump on the scene. And what I mean is that Canada's whole history, our whole operating system, since the war at least, and going back even further, maybe the First World War, has been completely upended. It's all been turned upside down. The days when the United States was our greatest friend, our protector, our leading trading partner, and now it's a menace that wants to annex us. It denies us even our sovereignty. Again, a head snapper. I mean, what is happening here? So I think that what they're all doing, not just Carney, but Carney is a good example of this, is using your words carefully to suggest, and using them ambiguously to suggest that, well, I'm not really being I'm not just doing what I have to do. I'm doing something that has a principle. Pragmatism. Well, we all like pragmatism. You're doing what you should do. But where it leads us is the real question, isn't it? I mean, that's probably the next one you're going to ask. Certainly the one I would ask. Where does this lead? If we are going to have this wonderful new embrace, for example, with China, in Canada's case, over the steep reductions in tariffs, meaningful reductions in tariffs on electric vehicles and on Canadian canola and so on and so forth. Everybody's happy about that. But really, is this embrace going to be welcome on day 3 and day 4 and day 5 and year 10? Are we still going to be happy about this Chinese embrace, or will it become rather suffocating?
We will go deeper into the contours of the takeaways from this visit to China. So the first takeaway is the EV reduction in the tariffs, right? So 49,000 Chinese EV vehicles will enter Canadian markets at a 6.1% tariff, which is equivalent to a most favored nation status. So that's definitely a step up. Canadians will get a reduction in canola oil, so you get to export more. So that's the first baby step. Do you think that this will be extrapolated into something more, into some more high value goods? So, for example, will there be partnerships in AI, in quantum technologies, something that will further move into the national security realm?
I think that's where we're going, and we're going quicker than we may imagined into the national security realm. I think the Chinese have a powerful interest, which is just being whetted now, in gaining advantageous position in other markets, replacing the United States as the essential trading partner. And you may say, okay, well, this is just, a few cars. I mean, there's 49,000 cars. That's 3% of the Canadian market, by the way. So it's not as though we're flooding the market. The Chinese are coming. It's not that. It's not like that yet. But there's no doubt that for President Xi Jinping, this is just a beginning, not the end. This is the beginning of further wonderful deals, more flag waving, more handshakes that we will see on our screens in the next, not even decade, I would say in the next 2 or 3 years, where both sides are, they say, this is great. The fishermen on our East Coast are happy because they can sell their lobster. And the fishermen on the West Coast are happy because they can sell their crabs. So everybody's happy. So why not what is there exactly to stop us doing more of this? Nothing, except if we could look back from, say, 10 years from now and realize that we've given away the store. What does that mean? We'll find out.
Mr. Milewski, let me go further deep in this. It is a high wire act that Prime Minister Carney is walking, isn't it? US represents almost 76% of Canadian imports. China represents 4%. The balance is completely it's not balanced. I mean, isn't it? You're risking 76% for that 4%. Do you think that deficit will really be or that balance will be sort of proper with the Chinese embrace?
Well, I think that from Carney's point of view, what he might say, I will try to speak for him. I have no idea what he would say, but what I imagine he'd be thinking, he might say something very different. What I imagine he'd be thinking is that this 4%, which you're quite right to point to, is part of a much larger whole, because we're not just expanding our trade with China. We're also expanding it with Indonesia, with Spain, all over the world. That's the idea. That is his strategy. And it's been successful now. It's been slow in coming. Up to now, the Conservatives in opposition in Canada have been saying loudly that, Carney's going off around the world again, and he always comes back empty-handed. I was just listening to a podcast about that. Oh, yeah, he never comes up with that. Well, so now we can't say that. This is a significant deal. But I insist that it's a part of a whole from their point of view, that it's not 4% of American trade that is being replaced by China, for example. Yes. It's going to be a much larger percentage than that, especially if Trump is going to go on this with these tantrums, like now he's going to sanction Europe for backing Denmark over Greenland. Now he's going to slap more tariffs on the whole world if they don't do what he wants. Otherwise, he'll bang his spoon on his high chair and have a fit. Well, if that's the way we're going, and we are, I mean, that's already happened, as you know, if that's the way we're going, then Carney will be able to say with reason that, yeah, you're right, it's only just a small percentage today, but what about when you add all of the other deals we're going to be making? Because that's what he set out to do. He said, okay, and Canadians back him on that, by the way. That's partly why he won the election he was supposed to lose. That they back him on the idea that, well, there's no use staying home and crying about it. We must do something about it, and that something has got to be, we've got to find our friends elsewhere, friends plural, not just China, not just India, not just the big boys, but all the little ones too.
I was monitoring the conservative media outlets in Canada as well as USA during the visit to China. And some of the commentary coming out was almost apoplectic. They feel that here's President Trump trying to get Greenland, essentially buy Greenland for national security, and all the while the neighbor to the north has gone towards China. So it negates the whole Greenland gambit in the first place. Like I said, it's a high wire act. how do you assuage those American concerns, especially since the trilateral CUSMA Pact, Canada, US, Mexico Pact, is coming up for negotiations in July? How do you assuage those concerns?
Well, I don't think they can be assuaged. I think that whatever happens, whatever Canada does, Canada bad right now in the United States, for conservatives in the United States and in Canada, some of them, this rapprochement with China, this embrace, is indecent, and it's wrong-headed because we're all going to be living in a police state if we let this go. Well, they have to also answer the question, I would say, what's your alternative? I mean, if you don't like Carney saying, what alternative do I have? I can't go to Mars and find trading partners there. What's wrong with Indonesia? What's wrong with Spain? The conservatives that you speak of, I believe they will get louder, and that you'll be ahead of the game in that sense. You spotted that story. Oh yeah, they're going to be angry about, and they're going to call us China lovers and so on. Well, the Liberal Party in Canada has been called that for years, going back even further than Justin Trudeau. I've been on a couple of those prime ministerial Canadian junkets to China, and it's been the same chorus from the conservative parties and individuals, and they have a case that this is too risky, this is too dangerous. What is your alternative is always the question. And I don't think they have an answer that's any better than what Carney has.
Personally, I mean, I feel that there is a sort of cold-hearted realism that has crept into the foreign policies of major nations since President Trump's use of tariffs, weaponizing trade, essentially. Now, my thing is that you've been a journalist for 4 decades. You understand the power of symbols, right? How much of this was an economic gambit with China, and how much of was it symbolism as messaging towards Washington D.C. that if you continue down this route, this is what you'll get.
I think it's the symbolism, the symbolic content is real, but it's incidental. In other words, it's happened without Carney going for that, because what he needed, considering that what we've just talked about, was to satisfy them. It was to stick his thumb in the eye of those conservatives who are opposing him and show them, oh, yeah, well, I've got a real deal this time. Now, you can't say I've come home empty-handed. And what is your alternative, please? Come back to that question. What is your alternative? Look, people on both sides, I think we can agree. People on both sides of that question, is it okay to be embraced by China when you may lose your selfhood? You may lose your sovereignty. Your national security will be under. People on both sides will agree, I think, that is a serious question and a serious danger. But they don't offer us an alternative right now. I don't think that they can tell us, well, here's what we should do instead. Let's trade with, well, who is there? I mean, we still are left with 3 battleships on this very choppy ocean, China, India, and the United States. And those 3, they're going to dominate whatever kind of world we inhabit, we leave for our children, I think. And this question is going to be asked daily, and you'll get as many answers. The longer you wait, the more answers you'll get. But none of them that I've heard so far are very persuasive. I mean, if you think it's a danger, that it's too much of a risk to be in bed with China, as the conservative opposition in Canada likes to say. Well, if you think that, okay, so who do you want to be in bed with? I mean, you want to be in the unemployment line? Do you? Because that may very well be the alternative too. I mean, we don't have another potential largest trading partner that can compete with the United States at all. What is it, 75% of our trade? A bit more, I think, even today.
Yeah. Well, the criticism is not completely without substance. The fact is that China does spy the exports, that the high value exports that China does send. Uh, those cars, those EV cars, they're all internet linked, right? And China will get a lot of data of Canadians when they fly on Canadian roads. Do you think that the security question should be should not be considered when you're dealing with a country like China, an authoritarian country like China?
Well, there's what should be and there's what is. I mean, going back to Carney's comment on that, that's why I said that he kind of answered those questions
Hmm.
with that rather frightening phrase that we got to take the world as it is. But I do think that from my long experience, I do think that these questions inevitably sink to the bottom of the sea for lack of anyone to come along and say, "Okay, look, I've got an alternative." That's what this question is. It needs that convincing answer. Say what
Hmm.
you're going to do instead.
Right.
And I think the Canadians, like in the words of the industry minister Melanie Joly, in Beijing, I believe she said that we're going into this with eyes wide open. You probably saw that quote.
Yes, I
We're
did.
going into this with eyes wide open. That's her version of an answer. But it isn't much of an answer at all, is it? To the question, well, what's your alternative? Well, we're going to be aware of how the Chinese are spying on us, stealing our data, and doing very well out of a regime of identity theft and persecution. I mean, Canadians are going to have to decide for themselves, am I going to buy a Chinese car? Well, the Chinese, remember, they have some questions to answer too.
Hmm.
Because remember, because this is all very nice if they want to extend their influence by using cars or by using anything else that they're going to buy, canola from us. They also have to answer, well, if where are we going to turn if this doesn't work out? What if the Canadians refuse to buy our cars?
Hmm.
And we've invested a couple of $1 billion in building a first plant
Yes.
and starting to build them. And Canada is saying after this summit, is it not, that we want to be the place where the first place where a Chinese designed and built car is made. Where
Good insight, Mr.
what if we say no?
Yeah, exactly. Great insight, Mr. Milewski, because these are the existential questions that even India is going to face when we deal with China as well. We have them on our borders. So and it's we find a lot of resonance with the way Canada is dealing. At least I do. Where Canada is dealing with China. Now, to kick the can further ahead, India is the next logical partner, and there has been warming of ties since Prime Minister Trudeau's reign. Now, Mr. Carney, again, I'll repeat it again, has shown the right attitude and has been very pragmatic towards the India relationship. How do you see it moving forward?
Well, there we go with that word pragmatic again.
Hmm.
Pragmatic or cynical? Same thing, but different tone.
Hmm.
The vaunted rapprochement between India and Canada, in my submission, doesn't really exist.
Hmm.
It's an illusion that both governments find convenient. They have not decided to settle the dispute, which began the precipitous decline in relations, which happened when Trudeau accused the Modi government of murder. They haven't solved that problem. Nobody said they're sorry. Nobody said they were wrong. So there has been no settlement other than the two governments looking at each other as it were, but certainly Carney and Modi, not Trudeau and Modi. I don't think Trudeau could have pulled it off. There was too much bad blood. We can discuss that if you like. But I think that the bottom line is that both governments have decided to let it be. They're
Hmm.
just going to have to go with the undecided, unsettled dispute in the background. And as long as the Canadians don't do this kind of thing again, will put up with it. And the Indians will say, the Canadians will say, as long as the Indians don't do this kind of thing again, we'll put up with it.
Mm.
In other words, it's the piece of the grave. It's the unsettled settlement. I don't think that it will endure. I think that the antipathy, to put it mildly, of Indians generally, not just the Indian government, but I mean, on this one, I think we would agree they do speak for the Indian people. It's not as though they're all, crying out for Khalistan. Quite the reverse. They want these people done away with.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the time will come, that movement isn't going away. Whoever murdered Hardeep Singh Nijjar did a great favor for the Khalistanis because it gave them a propaganda victory. Look,
Yeah.
you see, India is murderous. They've imitated the Khalistanis. They've become like them. So I see it as a great favor to the Khalistanis, a great mistake. Whoever killed Nijjar made a great mistake and gave a gift to the Khalistan movement. But settle it? No, it hasn't been settled because that will come back. And it'll come back because of that dynamic, where they have been given a propaganda boost that they could not have bought in a million years. They've been given the right to say, aha, you see, they're murderers.
Right.
And just as we have said for all of these years, that's going to come back. They're still at it. They're having bigger demonstrations. They're more organized, and their propaganda is polished and ready for prime time.
Mr. Milewski, the number one threat to Canada and election interference was China. And
Yeah.
you managed to do a deal with them. Is Khalistan that big of a stumbling block now for Indo-Canadian relations?
Well,
If it can be done with China, why can't it be done with India?
Well, it can be a stumbling block if people are stupid enough to resort to murder in the streets of Canada. And that's why this row began, and that's why it had to be at least pretend settled. Let's say it's a subterfuge. Is it worth it? No, absolutely not. I don't think there are, like most people in Canada, they have no idea who Hardeep Singh Nijjar was. Indians said he was a terrorist. Boy, do they have terrorists in India? I mean, Canadians know nothing about all this. And most Sikhs don't care about it either.
Yeah.
They're not clamoring. I say these demonstrations are well organized and their propaganda, I said, is ready for prime time. There's a polished elite group of Khalistanis in Canada, more than in any other place in the world, including India, including Punjab, who are good at this. They're good at seizing on opportunity. Say, aha, you see, Carney is going to crawl to Modi to sue for peace, to kiss his feet, and will be mowed down by the big Indian government and their killers, and on and on and on. And they're getting very good at that. And they have convinced a lot of people.
Mr. Milewski, you worked at the CBC. I've noticed that whenever there is any positive talk of an India-Canada sort of trade deal or any sort of bilateral movement in relationships, I see news reports, or very selective news reports that come out on CBC or the other sort of associated liberal media. They talk about the assassination of Mr. Nijjar, but fail to provide evidence. They talk about information. They said they've received credible information. But have you seen any evidence of the Indian state acting against or going forward with this assassination?
Well, I would say that it's a very good question, which should probably not be litigated in this forum.
Understood.
But I'm retired. They ain't going to fire me, so I will answer your question. I guess the simple way to put it is this: the Khalistanis in Canada have not given up their struggle by any means, and they will continue. Is there evidence that what they say is true? Is there evidence? Well, all I can tell you about that is that I do not believe that the Canadian National Police Force, the fabled Royal Canadian Mounted Police, I do not believe they are corrupt. I do not believe they were following political instructions to pretend that they had this evidence. Because they can't. If they tried that, I mean, this thing is going to court. There have been charges laid. This
Yes.
thing will go to court. People will be under oath. It will be public. So there is going to be a public exposition of evidence. The Prime Minister can't call up the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and say, Commissioner, look, this would be very inconvenient for relations with India if you went ahead with this prosecution. So can you stop it, please? That conversation will not happen. It's not. If it does, then we're not living in the Canada that I know. So, sorry for the long answer, but if you think, have I seen evidence? I have seen evidence in the form of the commissioner, the deputy commissioner, and their senior officials of the RCMP swear on a stack of Bibles that the Lawrence Bishnoi gang is working for the Indian government and that criminals operating in Canada under the direction or with the assistance of Indian officials were responsible for the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, I've seen recently, and not so recently, officials of the Indian government, such as the new High Commissioner, saying that, well, where's your evidence? They've asked the same question you just did. I don't blame you for asking it, because in my very long answer, notice I haven't given you any evidence, just evidence that I believe these people when they make the charge. But I think that when it comes to court, you're going to get some nasty surprises, and it's going to take some very fancy footwork, which I can't imagine sitting here today, for the government to sidestep that or to put it on a sidetrack somewhere to keep the Indians happy by putting it off stage.
Yes.
I don't see how that happens in Canada. I don't see how it happens.
So the way you've put it has been disputed pretty vociferously by the Indian government as well. Yes, you have 4 individuals who are already arrested and they'll go to trial. But is there a direct smoking gun with Indian authorities? Is a question that we still wait to see answers for. But
can I say one thing about
Yes,
that before we proceed? Sorry, but it is an important point. The other answer is yes, I have. And it takes the form of the Indian government's own actions with respect to the same allegations about the same murder plot made by the Americans.
Yes.
Remember, this is one plot with with various targets. So they were plotting to kill an American in New York and a Canadian in Surrey, British Columbia, and they succeeded in the latter case. That's the police theory.
Yes.
And at the moment, the Indian government is right where it was at the beginning, saying, well, you have no evidence, but that's what they say to the Canadians. But when the Americans submit the same evidence about the same plot involving the same murderers, the Indian government says, oh, we take this very seriously. We're definitely...
And action was taken as well. I think those were siloed differently, Mr. Milewski. I think they were 2 different evidences provided. One was an allegation, which is the Canadian side, and evidence was still forthcoming. And the American side gave pointed evidence through, and I guess action was taken over there, and that's still continuing. It's being contested as well. So, okay, my larger point over here, Mr. Milewski, is there is this distrust between Indian security agencies and Canadian security agencies, but we are seeing positive movements. We've seen our national security advisor, Mr. Doval, and his Canadian counterpart and other associated agencies have interactions with each other. But historically, Canada-India security ties have always been fraught with distrust. This deficit, do you think that under the Carney-Modi relationship, do you think it can be bridged?
Well, I've said that I don't think this is settled, and I'm not going to reverse my answer on that. I do think that it may blow up and become even more embarrassing.
Mm.
precisely because the political echelon at Mr. Carney's level and in his office, they are going to wish this would go away because they don't want to have a row with India about some guy who got killed. We didn't even know who he was, and we don't care. We're big boys. This is how the world works, and lots of governments go out and kill people. And it's sad, but we're not going to get hung up on that. But they're going to come smack head on into the legal process, which in Canada, as I say, is not corrupt. And if the prosecutor gets up and says, okay, here's what we got, and it looks just like what the Americans got, and which the Indians took seriously, in their words, well, there's going to be a problem, isn't there? And this is all going to blow up again. I don't think it's going to go away. And until Canada has a government that openly says, okay, we're going to sweep this under the rug with our eyes wide open, like Melanie Joly, and we're going to accept that, yeah, murder was committed on Canadian soil. Maybe the Indian government had something to do with it. We don't like it, but we're not going to cry about it. We've got other fish to fry, other things to worry about. When the government admits that they're accepting it and moving on, then things will change. But they haven't done that. I haven't heard a word from Carney to say...
Well, make the prediction, Mr. Milewski. What happens? Can these two events coincide simultaneously? The trial of Hardeep Singh Nijjar and India-Canada trade pacts?
Well, I will take my hat off to... If anyone can do it, probably Narendra Modi is the man. I mean, he's an enormously clever man, and he's also quite ruthless. And you can add Amit Shah into the mix and so on. It is a very interesting subject, and they're a very interesting group of men, and it would not be amazing to me or to many people. I don't think it's at all amazing if the government said, okay, enough of this. I want this guy got rid of. And somebody gets the bright idea, oh, well, who will rid me of this turbulent priest? The old saying. I think that the two things that you described could not happen together without an explosion, without the whole relationship going backwards again. Neither of the present governments want that to happen. They have agreed to let it go. Let's talk about... It's much more important to the voting public in both India and Canada to have a healthy economy. Let's build on trade. Let's worry about that. We didn't know this guy Nijjar. The hell with him. They're just not ready to say that out loud, so they're saying it quietly in a room between the two of them.
I want to go back into history. You are a subject matter expert on the Khalistan movement in Canada. And I have a very basic question to ask you. Why is it that these Khalistanis in Canada plot insurrection in India and want a breakaway state in India, but they never talk about the Punjab part of Pakistan? Why? Just explain this to our audience.
It's extremely bizarre, and I think it's inexplicable. It makes absolutely no sense at all, particularly when there are so many very important historical and cultural sites in Pakistani Punjab, which they don't seem to be interested in. What about Nankana Sahib? Is only the birthplace of the founder of the Sikh religion, Guru Nanak.
Yes.
They're not claiming, and I could go on, there's a whole list of them. And it makes no sense at all. So the real answer that they will not give and they cannot say is because it would never happen. It would never, it's completely impossible. Without Pakistani support, their movement dies. They have depended on Pakistani support from the very beginning, going back to the 1940s. And so it would be impossible to sustain their movement without Pakistan, and they wouldn't get that support if they started claiming pieces of Pakistan. They would be greeted like Trump is in Greenland. In other words, not at all. I mean, but you're quite right. It is absolutely absurd. And they hate hearing that question. They won't like it when they see the tape.
So are the Khalistanis in Canada, do they think that Pakistan has this brotherly love for them and they're aiding and abetting them for a sovereign state? Or is it something more sinister?
No, it's realpolitik. We were just talking about how Modi and Carney have decided to basically sweep as far as they can the Nijjar affair under the rug. Here too, it's realpolitik. The Khalistanis know they're going nowhere. They know that this Khalistani dream of an independent state is not going to happen. It's a fundraising tool. It makes you the big man on the street. If you are the leading Khalistani, well, you're the guy who's standing up for the Sikhs. At least that's the illusion that they propagate. That's what their business is, really. I mean, have you seen Gurpatwant Singh Panun of Sikhs for Justice,
Yes.
the leading figure now in the movement for Khalistan? Have you seen him raising an army? Are they going to fight anybody? No. It's entirely a paper tiger, but it's a good business because you are greeted as somebody who's, a hero of the Sikhs. When you go out at night, when you go to rallies and you lead rallies, you are a leader, and the contributions come flowing in.
Yep.
What's the problem with that?
Okay, I want to now put a bow on this conversation and just go back to what Mark Carney's foreign policy. G7 main nation, member of the Five Eyes security grouping, has gone ahead and done this deal with China and talked about a new world order. All right, done. You seem to be a bit cynical that he will go further and have a deal with India. How do you see foreign policy of Canada in 2026 and the years going forward?
I think it's going to be dramatically changed. We've had our heads snapped 2 or 3 times already in this interview by the things that have happened since Trump arrived on the scene. He's not departing. He's not going anywhere. He seems healthy, at least in his body, if not in his mind. And I don't think he's going away. Therefore, we should expect fresh drama on a daily basis. And what are we having now? I mean, you get up in the morning and you pick up the paper and, my God, what has he said now? It's not going to stop. In other words, the overturning of the old world order and its replacement by the new world order. And I think your generation and mine have some questions to answer about the kind of world that we're going to leave behind for our children. But I do think that it's going to continue and that it's going to get worse before it gets better, if it ever does. We may find in 2026 that's a little bit soon for the whole world to be changed. But what if Canada at that point is becoming the 51st state? And my life would certainly change. And if Greenland by then is also in the United States' hands, if China has taken over Taiwan, and so on and so on, and Ukraine is a memory as an independent nation, all of these things could easily happen by maybe not easily, but they could certainly happen by 2026. I don't mean to suggest that any of them is easy. There have been too many deaths in Ukraine alone for that. But I do not see that one day Trump will trip on something and depart this earth, that he will stop doing what he's doing, or that China will stop doing what it's doing in the South China Sea, or that Putin will stop doing what he's doing in Ukraine. I think these things are now set. They have their own momentum. We can't stop it. I mean, if Europe has experimented with the idea of showing a spine, in the case of Greenland, have they not? By saying, okay, well, if you want to threaten Greenland, we're going to get troops ready. We're going to have blood. You don't want that, right? So we're going to face down Trump in Greenland. Well, we'll see, won't we? I forget who it was who famously said, how many divisions has the Pope? It's
Yeah.
not about what's right and wrong. It's what they will go ahead and do. I think what you're fishing for is how bad is it going to get and when. And I don't pretend to be a prophet, but I don't think it's going to get better soon. It's going to get worse
Well,
soon.
I already know it's bad. I'm just wondering how worse will it get. But this is an Indian show. My questions are from an Indian prism. I have one more question.
Go ahead.
It's reported pretty widely that in the next couple of months, Mark Carney may come to India. And it appears that Modi Carney have a good relationship. If that does happen and Prime Minister Carney does come to India, what would you like to see happen?
Well, for one thing, I think that it shouldn't happen at all unless and until the Indian government itself raises the money and builds a memorial to the victims of Area India 182. There's no we have 4 memorials in Canada, and I grant you that most of the victims were Canadians, but this was an Indian plane, the Indian pilots, the Indian crew, and it was a group of former Indian citizens who blew up the plane. That's just one thing that bothers. I know a lot of the families of the victims. I've known them for years now. It's been 40 years since the bombing, and I know this bothers them. Why are we not recognized somehow? Why are there memorials to every little soldier all from World War I all over? But there's no, well, since they started that movement, 4 memorials have been built in Canada. I'd like to see one built by the government and formally inaugurated by the government in the person of its prime minister in India. That's the first thing. The second thing I would like to see a genuine exchange, genuine people-to-people exchanges in, I don't mean they're not genuine, that's the wrong word. People-to-people exchanges between India and Canada are enormously fruitful. It's wonderful for Canada. The food is fantastic, but it's become mired in a completely wrong dynamic of crime. You've heard, of course, about all the extortion cases, crime and murders. There's an extortion just about every other day now in British Columbia. I mean, an extortion attempt, the shootings. And so it's the wrong kind of people-to-people exchanges. We're not screening these people. We're getting the wrong people. And of course, this is what people are complaining about with immigration all over the world. I'm talking about something quite different. I'm talking about encouraging immigration, which is going to lead us to, let's all go to Diwali tonight, which is going to lead us to even more restaurants. Then I'd be happy by that. I'd like to see a vast improvement in the quality and style of people-to-people exchanges, an intermingling of 2 wonderful people. The Canadians and the Indians, even though there's so many of you, you might drown us out, and we'll all be singing your songs, and you won't be singing ours. But well, we'll see. Those are the 2 first things that I mentioned. But of course, the principal thing that should happen, if and when Carney comes to India, and they really think about how to put on the best possible show, is they should have a comprehensive, not just a free trade agreement governing some cars that'll fill 3% of the market, or crabs, lobsters, and that's about it. No, we need a comprehensive free trade agreement where India and Canada set an example of what it should be. It should be trade without tariffs. There should be, why should there be any tariffs at all? Unless it's to discourage one industry and encourage another industry, and it's all the result of lobbying, and your lobby has more muscle than my lobby, and plus I got 5,000 people from the local Gurdwara who are going to come and vote for you if you carve out a special exception for my industry. You think that doesn't happen? It's been happening for 50 years, and it's been getting worse and worse and worse. So that's another thing which annoys me. And therefore, under the administration of Terry Milewski, it will be abolished, and we will have a true, comprehensive free trade agreement that means free trade, not trade with where you have to sit down and calculate the tariffs. Is it 6.1% now? Yes, it is 6.1% now, and that's supposed to be standard. Why is it even 6? Why is it any percent? Why exactly? I mean, you're better at producing that thing, and we're better at producing that thing. I don't think you have many lobsters in Mumbai. Well, we got lots on the East Coast. Come and buy our lobsters. That's my call.
Well,
so there's a few things that could happen when Carney comes. I don't suppose I'll be satisfied, but I'll ask for it.
On that note, thank you so much for this conversation.
I enjoyed it very much. Excellent questions. Thank you very much. It was interesting. Thank you.